situation, right, where you're going against popular belief, you know, it's like you wait for the hammer to come down on you. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about relationship dynamics, or different ways to communicate in relationships, particularly as it pertains to the idea of what happens when we get into a relationship. And I'm not going to address the part of making good decisions and realizing that you have different natures before you consecrate the relationship, but I'm just going to take it from the perspective that you've already got in the relationship, it's established, and you're a year, maybe 2-3 years into it, and you're now in the reality of the fact that you have completely different natures, okay? And what I mean by natures is when one person is very physical, affectionate, loves to touch, cuddle, caress, is very romantic, playful, you know, sexual, that type, and then the other person is not physical, doesn't hardly ever displays affection, has more of a serious, kind of drier attitude, doesn't tend to be very playful, humorous, joke around, light and easy, but they have a more kind of serious, dry, business-like demeanor, out of lack of a better word, that they kind of conduct themselves with. And what happens when these two are in an intimate relationship and the physical person is never experiencing or never getting the affection, the sexual interludes, the romance, you know, the cuddling, kissing, holding hands type of behavior that they very much need and they crave endlessly. When you're a physical person and you're very affectionate and sexual, sensuous in nature, that need never dies. It never goes anywhere, okay? It either is fed and met, or it starves and becomes bitter and resentful, okay? But it's same way with this person. This person who has the non-affectionate type of needs doesn't need affection, doesn't need to hold hands or kiss, and you know, probably, not necessarily, but probably, you know, wants sex far less than the physical person. But either way, you've got a severe clash in needs and the fulfillment of those needs going on in an intimate relationship where there's love and maybe commitment, even marriage, and you know, you're trying to figure out what to do about it. And unfortunately, if it's clearly a case of mismatched natures, there's probably really nothing you can do about it. When I say that lightly, you know, because, you know, it's like, oh, well, you know, never say never. And of course, anybody can change if they really want to. And while that sounds good, and it sounds good in theory, and we say, okay, yeah, well, nothing's impossible, of course, right? But the reality is that for the most part, when people are born with a basic nature, it never changes. They pretty much go through their entire life embodying that same basic quality. It's like, you could compare it to the idea of an introvert or an extrovert. They are born with these tendencies as a predisposition, and while you can develop within those predispositions anything, they still have that basic predisposition. It's the same thing with the physical, affectionate person as opposed to the, you know, non-physical, unaffectionate person. But let's say that you're already in this relationship and your needs are not being met and it's bothering you and it's really weighing heavy on you, and you want to bring some sort of resolve to it. You want to sit down and express your feelings, you know, to give your partner the heads up, as well as hopefully be able to, this terrible way of saying this, to change their behavior, or being able to let them inform them of what your needs are so that they can meet them, because they're clearly not meeting them right now. And one of the things I want to point out is that anytime we are communicating, there's all kinds of levels of communication going on at the same time, okay? And every message has what I call an underlying message. And the underlying message is not what's being said, but what it indicates. okay, or what they associate and connect it to, that becomes the underlying message. And the underlying messages are like subliminal messages. They're very powerful, and they tend to be the ones that get heard and, most importantly, acted on. And this is what I mean. And I do want to point out one other thing real quick, because, you know, many ideas, especially psychological ideas, sound good in theory, okay? We hear them, we think about them, and we say, yeah, that's, you know, that sounds like a sound idea to me, so I'm going to go ahead and try it. But we're leaving out, we're not identifying the emotional component, the psychological component, and how people perceive things in terms of building drama or themes out of what we call core issues, okay? And who knows what core issues a person has, but we have basic themes that run through humanity. And one of the most common themes that just about everybody has to some degree is some kind of a notion of, around the idea of being loved, being lovable, being worthy of love. What does it take to get love? I mean, as human beings, we're a basic need. We say the basic needs are, you know, breathing, drinking. No, a basic need is love. We have a need for love as human beings. And based on our experience growing up and all that type stuff, determines not only did we feel love, but also what did we have to do to get love? Why weren't we loved? You know, all kinds of issues come into play around that theme. So if we're in a relationship and and I want to sit down and talk to you, right? And let's say I'm a good communicator and I create the ambiance, create the mood, and really relax you. And then I want to sit down and I'm going to present this in a way that's very easy for you to hear. As soon as I start saying, I have a need that you're not fulfilling, or that has not been fulfilled up to this point in our relationship, because see, chances are he's been being himself and he thinks everything's fine, right? Because 3 years and we're still in the relationship, so he's not aware that there's a problem. So now I'm going to inform him that, gee, not only is there a problem, but there's been a problem all along, right? I've never been really satisfied with you. That becomes the underlying message. And even when you say it as nicely and pleasantly as possible, that's what he really hears. And even though he may be open and be able to receive it and go, oh, wow, I had no idea, and kind of openly, express it with you, and maybe even talk about how you're going to do it different in the future and all that type of stuff, and you're thinking, oh, cool, right? That's great, right? This really worked. So you go out and maybe, let's take the best possible scenario, maybe over the next 3, 4, 5 days, he really responds, right? And you're thinking, cool, right? So you're thinking, it's happening and that was a good idea and it's working and stuff. But then all of a sudden, you got to keep in mind that he's having to, and I'm just saying he, could be she, but I'm a woman, so I'm saying he, that he could very well, see, it's not natural for him to do what you're asking him to do, which means he's going to have to remind himself, remember to do it. And when he's doing it, it's not going to be natural behavior to him. This isn't something that he needs or that he's necessarily even enjoying, but he's doing it for you, okay? So he either starts forgetting or it loses its immediacy, and so it just starts kind of going by the wayside, so to speak, or he starts getting a little bit of resistance building up to the idea, because what he starts thinking about after a while is that what you're really saying is that you're not happy with me, right? And in order for you to be happy with me, I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to be different, do something different, act different. And the message that says, in order for me to love you, you're going to have to change, is never a good message. That I've never, ever seen that message go over well. So that kind of becomes the perception or the underlying message, and there's an excellent possibility that not only will it go by the wayside, but it'll actually become even worse. And I'm sure many of you have had this experience, and you were left going, right? What the heck is that, right? So then you kind of regret even having said anything, and you kind of go through a few more hoops as a result of a kind of like failed experiment or technique. But there's a much easier way to do it. And I'm not saying that this is going to work when you clearly got different natures, but it is certainly a lot better than the direct approach to telling somebody that they're not fulfilling you in some way. And that is to take it upon yourself to use skill to know how and understand how to produce certain responses in people, or how to produce certain behavior in people. And this goes back to basic principles like, like begets like, what you put out you get back, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. These are all principles and rules that are basically saying that the quality of energy that I embody when I interact with somebody stimulates that same quality of energy in them, puts them in a similar mood to my mood. They match me, in other words, and they will behave out of that mood or out of that feeling quality just like I am, and we have an interaction that is based on that particular feeling quality. So if I want a man to be more affectionate with me, then I would take it upon myself to be more affectionate with him, right? And as soon as he reciprocated and was affectionate with me, I would reward him for that by letting him know that I like it. I really like it when you do that. That feels really good. Or, you're so sexy. Or we would somehow send the message to him, oh, when you do that, I really like it. And that ultimately sends the same message, but it sends it in a way that encourages him to behave in a certain way, rather than saying, I'm not happy and I've never been satisfied in this relationship because you don't do this. You see what I mean? There's a huge difference in the approaches. So, and same thing with like romance or any behavior, create the ambiance, create the mood, embody the feeling quality, behave out of that feeling quality, interact, use it to interact with the person, and knowing that that's going to stimulate the same feeling, emotional quality in them, and then engage in the interaction and reward, okay? Reward it. Reward it by showing appreciation, admiring, thanking, sending little messages that say, ooh, this works, right? So that and it sends a message to them that, oh, she really likes it when I do this, so I'm going to do it more, right? Or anytime I want to kind of get her in the mood, I know what to do now. But it's a much more effective way of communicating that virtually causes very little, if any, resistance. And naturally, even that don't work sometimes, and you can even provoke the behavior that you're looking for. And in that case, you have to just pretty much sit down and take a real square look, so to speak, at the relationship itself, and ask yourself some different types of questions about the future possibility, or about the possibility for longevity or long term. Because if one person is not being fulfilled in a relationship, it's not going to last, right? So something has to be resolved, or something has to be mended and worked out. A different play has got to start forming, a different way of interacting with each other that is satisfactory and it meets the basic needs of both people. Or it's not only going to be a problem, but it's going to steadily become a bigger and bigger problem as you continue into it. Once the mind fixates on something and starts thinking about it, and then starts trying to take corrective action, and it doesn't work, it just facilitates it. I mean, it like takes on a life of its own. So, but anyway, there's just some tips on what I call subliminal ways of communicating, but more importantly, it's a creative, skillful way of learning how to elicit the behavior that you're really wanting to experience from your lover, your partner, or your companion. So the other idea that we so commonly see in relationships that I kind of wanted to touch on was